Have you ever lost a loved one, yet still feel connected? Do you believe there is life after this life? Welcome to Still Connected. Regina, thank you for coming to my show, and it's such an honor to have you back again.
It's a pleasure to be here, Helen.
So tell us a little bit more about your background. What are you doing, and so why did you get into what you do now?
Okay, well, I'm a psychic medium, and I started the process of becoming a psychic medium about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I use the phrase becoming a psychic medium because it's not something that I have been doing all my life. About 10 years ago, I felt this, what I call a draw to mediumship. At that time, I mean, I've had a number of careers throughout my life that have been what you might call, normal. And working with teaching children in a variety of capacities. When my children were growing up, I was a family child care provider. I ran a child care business in my home. It was all more typical. But about 10 years ago, I felt this draw to mediumship, which I started to explore. And I actually went to a psychic medium and asked her, to do a session for me. Mm-hmm. And in that session, she said, "You want to do what I'm doing, and you can and you will." And that woman actually helped point me in the direction of other people that I met, other circles. Circles are practice sessions for mediums. Uh-huh. Mediums get together and practice. And she put me in that direction, and here we are today.
Well, I think a lot of audience or a lot of people, they really don't quite understand the difference even between psychic and a medium, and what do you do? What's the difference?
Okay, mediumship, and that's primarily what I do. Mediumship is communicating with spirit, mm-hmm. Loved ones in spirit. There's spirit guides that will come through. I will even see animals. People's pets will come through. They very really? Much like when they do that. I don't hear spirit animals. They don't talk to me. I just see them like they would when they were here. Mm-hmm. But as a medium, I communicate with people who are in spirit, and I do that. Each medium is different. It's not all the same from people who are mediums. So I experience it typically, and I say typically because it seems like whenever I say this happens this way, spirit switches it up for me. So typically, I am clairaudient, which means I hear things, but I don't hear with my ears. It's more like I hear thoughts going through my head that I know are not mine. I will also see things, people, animals, objects, but I don't see them like I'm seeing you. I don't see them like I'm seeing these beautiful flowers. I see them more with what's referred to as my third eye, so it's not as vivid and clear, but I see it. And then I will also feel things. I'm clairsentient. So I hear things, see, and I feel.
Okay.
And it's usually a combination of those that I use to communicate to the sitter what's happening.
It's fascinating. So when you hear, not with your ears.
No.
Actually, so you don't hear the sound, but it's more
I'm not hearing sound. No.
Okay.
So and that's actually makes for very interesting life because it's not actually happening at the moment, but it happens frequently that I could be talking and I'm hearing sound. I'm hearing a conversation. I'm hearing cars pass. I'm hearing dogs bark. So I'm hearing with my ears, but at the same time I could be hearing spirit. So it's almost like I'm holding two conversations because I'm talking and I'm hearing.
So is that kind of confusing for you sometimes? I just wonder, when you are by yourself, do you hear like all of a sudden spirit talking to you, or
I have to admit that that's happened, and no, it's not confusing because there's a definite feeling of knowing what I hear or thoughts that I'm having. Like I could think a thought such as, I like your beautiful suit, or, this is a very exciting opportunity. And I know what that feels like to think that. And then I know what it feels like when spirit's communicating with me. But to answer your question, sometimes that happens, and it can be quite, I mean, I'll use an example that happens to me. Sometimes I'll be getting ready for work. I may be talking to my friend, and then I'll hear, "Forgot your cell phone," and I'll be like, "Oh, I did forget my cell phone. Thank you." Like
Seriously?
yeah.
So you will hear somebody
I'll hear
reminding
sometimes, but that doesn't happen often.
So is that a spirit of your family members or just any spirit?
I believe what I believe in my own heart is that I have guides that work with me.
Okay.
And I do have, because I have family in spirit, and they will. But most mediums, I mean, I do not sit for myself.
Okay.
So I do, like I said, I go to practice circles, and I associate with other mediums. So in those situations, my own family members will come through sometimes. I have, very close, dear aunts and grandmothers and grandparents that I love greatly that will come through. But I don't go home and sit down and open up my mediumship and talk with them.
I mean, is it possible for you to kind of do reading for yourself?
I could, I just don't.
Okay, I see.
I just would rather, and there's also, I mean, not that I question mediumship, but I also enjoy the validation. I know what my grandmother looks like, and I know, and it's not that I'm questioning, is this really happening? That's not the case. But just as yourself, or someone else, they like that validation, One time, another medium brought through my ex-husband's father, and he came through he came to me asking me to give my ex-husband a message. But that medium who never met him, I mean, she got that description like she'd known him all her life.
Oh,
and that was validating to me as a medium. Even as a medium, I would expect that type of, that validation.
It's very interesting because, as you know, I was born and raised in China, and we were kind of brainwashed, if you can imagine, growing up in China. So we really didn't think that there is life after life, there is angel, or we didn't believe in God, and so that's very difficult for me to really imagine that. There is a higher power out there, and now I am a believer. And just because it took me a long time, and just before the show we were talking, and I told you that I actually didn't believe in angels. I wanted to believe, but I feel like I've never seen scientific proof. I need something to show me, and so it was very hard for me to believe in afterlife, just because of my training. I work with people in this world. And so I don't know whether there is energy after this world. And this is an eye-opener for me. And so that's the reason why I'm interested to learn more about it, and really just to keep my heart open. I think that's more important, probably. And so just tell us a little bit more about your experiences working with other people. And are they open to this idea, or are most people non-believers?
Pardon me?
Are most people non-believers?
Well, I don't know how I could pull off, define most. There are people who are excuse me. There are people who are believers. There are people who are open to believing. There are people that when you start are like I remember one man in particular. I was in front of a group, and he was one of those. Okay, and I said, but sometimes when you're in a group and you have a message, you ask the person. You say, "May I come to you?" Meaning, I have a message for you. Will you take it? And he's like, "Okay," like, if I must, But I started talking, and I remembered who came through and what her message was. And as I talked, you could almost see the ice melting. And by the time I was finished, he was crying.
Oh, wow!
And it was very powerful for me, and it was powerful for him. And I also remember at the time, and this happens frequently, is that spirit will communicate that they were raised to be a non-believer. They were raised to believe when life ends, you're dead, and it's dark and there's nothing. And so when these spirit passed, and all of a sudden they realized that their energy still exists and they're still alive, so to speak, they'll communicate to me that at first maybe they were confused or surprised, or that they, I mean, I've had people say that things that they were taught were blatantly incorrect, is what they would, that was their words. Like they just didn't expect to continue on, or that spirit would communicate that this was something, this mediumship, even if they believed in life after, after life. They weren't a believer in mediumship, so sometimes spirit will communicate that, and that will be validation for the family, because the spirit will say, well, your grandmother's saying this is something she never would have done or believed in when she was alive, and the person would be like, oh yeah, you're right, but they're acknowledging it now.
Okay, and so I'm just wondering, do people who have this psychic medium ability or skills, is this like a learned ability, or it's more like you were born with such a gift?
Both. I mean, I think it could be, I mean, I do meet, and I do know mediums who have had this ability their whole life. For me, it was something that, because I felt that draw, I went and pursued the ability. I pursued learning to develop that.
So could you tell us a little bit more about how you got started? Like, what was the draw and what happened that made you feel like you want to go this route? Because I understand you changed your career, like a pretty big sharp turn, and so that's pretty interesting.
It was interesting. I said, it's hard to explain it. It's not like I heard spirit say, Regina, you need to be a medium. It wasn't like I felt this inner draw, this very strong inner desire towards mediumship. As I mentioned before, I didn't know what to do with that. At that point in my life, I had never even gone to a mediumship session. I knew what mediums were, I knew what they did, I believed in it, but I'd never even been to one. So one day I noticed that there was a psychic fair near where I live, and I made the point of, I'm going to go there. And I did. And I just picked a medium. I didn't go to ask for anyone in particular. I just get psychic fairs. There's numerous psychics and mediums available, and you can just pick one. So I picked one. And she asked me, why are you here? And I wanted validation, so I didn't tell her. I just said, well, I'm hoping that's what you tell me. And she did, though. She sat for a minute. She goes, oh, you want, and as I mentioned before, you want to do what I'm doing. And I said, and then she said, and you will. And we talked a little bit more about that. She also brought through my Aunt Mary, who was very close to me. And then after the reading, she gave me some information about where I could go to practice with mediums. And I was very excited about that. I was very excited.
So is this something like when you play violin, you need to keep on practicing and then you get better and better? So I wonder whether there's something you need to practice every day, or some drills you need to do?
No.
Exercise?
No. I think the practice in opening and receiving spirit was something that I needed to do, to develop that skill, to develop trust in it. Initially when you open and you start to receive messages, you do like, did I just make that up, or or did that happen? And it helps to have the energy. Also works on the spoken word, so it's also important to keep talking. My experience is to keep talking, because the more you talk, the more you'll get. Like if I sit and wait for information, it could be like crickets, and I'll hear spirit say, talk. Like, okay. But in terms of practicing, like I don't do like mediumship drills every day to practice like someone with like a violin would. So it's more for me, more of like once I was opened, the skill. My experience is the ability is there, though I do. I try to generalize because it changes. When I first started, using my mediumship skills that I developed, I was very clairaudient. I saw things occasionally, but for the most part, I was hearing. Now, I still hear, I see more, and I feel more probably than all three at this point in time. Though I say that because it could change.
Okay, I see. So is this something that the longer you do, then the better you get?
I hope so. No. I don't know how to answer that question. I mean, I know, I think it changes. I mean, the longer, I think there was definite benefit to not giving up. When I first started, I just would get a little bit, and for, sometimes people can't take what you're saying, and you need to just work through that, as well,
And so tell us, what's a typical session like? You work with individuals and you also with group sessions.
Also with group sessions.
Yeah, so what
also
kind of experience?
phone sessions.
What kind of experience would that be?
Well, an individual session, if someone comes for a mediumship session, I usually start out a little bit explaining. First question I ask is I don't ask them information about why they're there or who they want to see, because I'm a very strong believer in the expression "don't feed the medium." So I don't want someone coming in and telling me all about the person that they want to hear from, because it'll, and if I do get that information, then I sort of have this conversation with spirit in my head saying, okay, she just told me all that, so now please give me something else.
Okay.
Because I can't say, okay, your grandmother's here and she's heavy and holding a tray of chocolate chip cookies, if this woman just told me that she had a grandmother who's heavy and baked cookies.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
I would need, so I just ask spirit, okay, help me out here. But that's why I very strongly talk about don't feed the medium. I usually mention the sessions can be interactive once they start, but I usually ask people or prefer that they just keep their answers simple to yes, no, or I don't know, as opposed to
give you more information.
Feeding me more information. And it's also important, and then I talk a little bit, I ask them if they've ever had a mediumship session. If they say no, I explain a little bit about how I get information, hearing, seeing, and feeling it. And then usually by the time I'm done doing that, I'm hearing, okay, Regina, let's go. And then I start the session. I usually tell people that I look off to the side sometimes because I need a clear wall, or I don't need it. I shouldn't say that, but it's helpful. Like that wall over there is awesome. Because if I were seeing something right now, which I'm not, it gives me like a canvas to look at. That doesn't necessarily have to happen. I've done mediumship in places where they're, normal places. Not that this place isn't normal. Sorry. And then it starts, and people will ask questions sometimes, depending upon how the session's going. Some people get very emotional.
Yes. The reason why I want to do this show, actually, I really thought about it. Is this something I want to get into? Because I'm a nutritionist and Chinese herbalist. I really work with people physically, emotionally, and I use a lot of diet and nutrition. So psychic medium is something that's very foreign for me, and I didn't believe it. And so, but just my personal experience, that's why I want to bring it up here, just really validated. Last time after I met you, and you came to my show, the first show, Health Factor, we talked, and you did this channeling with George Harrison and David Young, and the whole time I was like, okay, I'm not sure. I think probably she's just making it up. Maybe she's got a really good imagination, and so I was like really totally very skeptical. And that's why after the show, I invited you to come to my house and do just a private reading with me. Actually, I just wanted to kind of check you out, really see whether you are real or not.
You hit all that very well.
And so the experience really, I think, was so powerful. That's the reason why I feel very passionate now about what we're doing. I think this is going to be very healing for people, because when I work with a lot of especially cancer patients, a lot of people who have physical illnesses, actually they have so much emotional trauma and emotional issues that they didn't know how to deal with. And so, especially with cancer patients, a lot of them have grief and sadness in the lungs and a lot of anger, resentment in the liver and gallbladder areas. They just could not get it out. And I told you now, since you know, my mom actually passed away 4 years ago. And she was a great mom, and if for some of the audience who heard the story probably know that my mom actually survived stage 4 pancreatic cancer for 18 years and was doing great. And so she was in China, in Shanghai with my dad. And last time I talked to them, you know, they were fine. And then got a phone call from my dad saying that your mom is not doing well. She is in the hospital. You really need to come back. And so I'm thinking, okay, what can be wrong? And so she was coughing, and then she was diagnosed with pneumonia. And I'm thinking, okay, pneumonia, you know, it's not really that bad. But by the time I got back to Shanghai, it was too late. And I didn't even get to say goodbye to my mom. And so it's been really, really a lot of grief and sadness for me. I've been trying to work because I said, okay, I know how to help myself emotionally and physically. After that time, I started to have a lot of issues with my digestion. And I know a lot of sadness and grief actually stored in lungs and colon. And I started to have symptoms of indigestion. And I always wake up between 3 and 5 a.m. That's the time of the lungs.
Oh.
And in Chinese medicine, yeah. And so I knew my lungs were just so out of balance, and I was just sad. And so whenever I thought of my mom, all I could feel was grief and sadness. And then when you came to my house, I said, okay, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to see what's going to happen, whether my mom is going to come or not. And she came. Actually, you just came in, and I started chatting with you, and you were like, okay, I feel it. I saw a woman here. I need to sit down and talk to you. Can we start? Can we start? So I said, oh, really? Where is she? And so we started to sit down in the living room. When you started to talk about my mom, you described what she looks like and what she dressed like and her hairstyle, and I knew it was my mom. And I was in shock because there was no way you could know that. You have never seen my mom. I have no pictures in my house, you know.
No.
So that's why when you started to describe my mom, I said, oh, really? Is this real? And what happened really blew my mind. And I remember you were doing the reading for like about an hour and a half.
I remember that.
And I was so emotional.
Because when your mother at the end said that, you know, it was time to end, you were like, why? No.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. And so, but that was such a powerful session for me, and really validated what you do, and it turned me into a believer. I just want to let you know that, and
That's
I'm
awesome.
really grateful for what you do. And then I remember when my mom was talking to me, you were like, okay, your mom is sitting next to you, and she was like patting on your knees, and she was like touching your hair, and I really felt it. I felt it. I said, okay, I could really see my mom. But before that, I remember we were talking. I said, how come I never saw my mom coming? And I miss her. And then you were telling me that need to keep your heart open. And so need to keep that negative energy away. When you keep your heart open, then you can accept the energy from your mom. And so,
And you were also feeling very guilty
Yes.
about
not being able to help my mom.
not being able, and even though, and that was, if I remember, and if it's okay to share, part of your session, that was, you know, much of what her message was, that,
Yes.
you know, that how much love she had for you, and that she was trying to negate that all that feeling wasn't necessary, that she felt very much you were there for her.
Yeah. Yeah, because I thought I could have done something more for her. I just felt like I didn't help her enough. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Again. Yeah, and so I think what you did, especially when you told me what my Chinese nickname was, my mom used to call me, I was just unbelievable. I thought that was just totally unbelievable. And so, because none of the Americans could pronounce that name. It's a very difficult name to pronounce. Yeah, and so even if I write it down, most people cannot pronounce it.
Right.
And so,
Well, I remember she was very patient with me, you know,
Yeah.
because she's like, you know, chin, and she was saying it, and I was like, what, you know, trying to put together, you know, what she was saying.
yeah, it's Jingqiu, 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 and nobody could pronounce it. And so you got it, and I was just so shocked. And I remember 2 other spirits came,
Yes.
and they were unexpected. And I didn't know why they came, and so I didn't really like them.
I could tell.
Okay, one of them was my uncle, who was very kind of mean to my mom, and he was a troublemaker, and so pretty much my mom like was trying to help him, and he was into a lot of fighting and a lot of troubles, and so I really didn't like him. I remember when he came, you described what he looked like, what his eyebrows looked like, what the facial expressions. I knew it was my uncle. So I remember I asked you, I said, "What is he doing here? Tell him to get away." I don't like him. Yeah, but you were telling me.
And that's actually, I'm glad you brought that point up, because as part of mediumship is I don't know who's coming through.
Yeah.
I don't make requests. I just don't know. But that being said, and people will come with intention of who they would like to hear from, such as you wanting to hear from your mother.
Yeah.
As part of a medium, I can't guarantee that will happen. And sometimes other people do come through, such as an uncle who was not a nice person and you don't want to hear from him. But what I asked people is to keep their hearts open and be open to that, because it has happened numerous times, and that's part of the feeling that I can do. When I feel, and I not only see them, and I feel their personality. I can feel like how mean or nasty they were.
Yeah.
But I also, they let me feel that, so I can communicate that to the guest, to my sitter. But at the same time, more often than not, they come through understanding and having a different perspective. And they come through apologizing. They come through and say, this is what I did to you, and I'm sorry I was such a jerk. Or sometimes their language is even stronger, describing themselves. And they come through asking for apology or asking for forgiveness.
Yeah.
So it's actually, it opens up the opportunity for healing and forgiveness if someone would be willing to accept that message, or accept, like, for example, your uncle. Can I, as a medium, it is the right of the sitter to say, no. And I will say to the spirit,
Go away.
I'm sorry, you have to go. Let someone else step through.
That happened. And actually, another spirit who came, according to your description, was my great-grandfather, my mom's grandfather. And he was very mean to her when she was growing up. And so when he came, my mom was quiet. You said the spirit, her energy dropped.
I don't remember that, but
I started to feel angry about it. So I said, why are you still trying to control her? Go away. And then I remember that he went away also. I just want happy, energy there. And I really don't want those mean spirits coming. But you are telling me that they are learning lessons on the other side as well.
Right. And I think what you're calling the mean spirit, people who we would say are mean, or again, they let me feel that, but they don't come through. It's my experience in general that they don't come through still being mean. Like, oh, tell her this and tell her that. Oh, no. They don't. They come through more humbled. They come through saying, this is how I was, and I am so sorry, because I can see now how I affected people. I can see now the results of my actions. So I think I still feel strongly that that's important to hear that message. But if someone's not open to hearing it, or they're not ready in their life to hear it, and they just say to me, no, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, well, my last thought is I want to let you know, because ever since the session, I really start to feel happy. I really, whenever I think of my mom now, I can see my mom. I can feel her energy, and it's very positive. So that's why I think what your reading did for me is very healing. And so it just brought back a lot of happiness and good memories
wonderful.
with my mom. And just one last story. When I was skiing a couple of weeks ago, I was skiing down the slope, a Black Diamond slope, and I was like, wee, because I saw my mom with me
Oh.
as an angel. And so I'm so happy, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me back.